Welcome to part 2 of our ranking. Make sure you've seen part 1 before watching this video, but let's get straight into it. Number 15, I'm a USA Bae. Although a plotline focusing on dolls usually wouldn't be my favorite, I thought the moral decisions between choosing one or the other doll was super fun. I also love seeing Paul again as Carly's manager, Josh Peck, incredible. And maybe the highlight of this episode is seeing Monkey, Sully the Monkey. He was brilliant. I love that for this episode. Maybe where this episode loses some points is the stuff with Byron and Harper. I thought that was a little silly, but it wasn't so bad. Number 14, iHate Carly. This is one of those episodes where my personal opinion might take over. Like, I remember looking back at this second episode when it came out and loving it out of the first 3 that came out because we had mention of Hubert and Miss Briggs and old Carly haters, and all that stuff just really was exciting for me as someone who loves Easter eggs. So some of that first watching bias is definitely seeping in here, but this episode is still phenomenal. We get to see Nora come back and be as creepy as ever. We get to see iCarly Hater 57 in the mix, and we get to see the murder board. And alongside this main story of Carly finally finding another love interest, I guess, after Bo, is we see Spencer and Freddie with their bromance, and Freddie helping him out when Spencer blinds himself. And overall, this is a pretty well filled out episode. Maybe the pacing's a little weird. They haven't figured out how to produce this new iCarly series yet, but overall, like, a very good fan service episode, just like the second episode of season 2 was. Lucky number 13, I'm Wild and Crazy. See, this is a perfect example of how to do a filler episode in a show like this, although there aren't really any filler episodes because there's always the story progressing a little bit, but this episode is definitely more of a filler. Seeing Carly think that she's drunk when she's not was just classic, and then thinking she got a tattoo but didn't actually, and she thinks she's doing all these wild things, but really it's just Carly at her best. All that stuff was brilliant, and we got to see the groovy smoothie come back and Freddie kind of build his business, and I really love this episode for all those things. I thought it was really entertaining as well as informative and character building, all that stuff all together. I thought this was a great episode. Number 12, iReturn to iWebicon. So since we have 2 seasons, we have 2 sets of premieres and 2 sets of finales, usually bigger episodes, and iReturn to iWebicon season 1 finales ends up being last on our list out of those 4. First up, obviously a very entertaining episode in a completely different setting, a lot of really funny moments, but those funny moments and those best moments are really what you remember from this episode. Everything else is kind of a mess and the story is really blurred. This episode is a culmination or the beginning of a culmination for all of our season 1 characters like Bo, Wes, Double Dutch, so it serves a very important plot point. But the story itself in this episode is very blurred. Like, if I were to ask you what's happening in this episode, beginning, middle, and finish, like, I think you're going to struggle with it because what really matters is that final moment between Harper and Dutch, and of course that memorable cliffhanger between Carly, Freddie, Wes, and Bo. This episode had even more potential with the whole connection to iWebicon. Like, that's a very big thing that happened in the original iCarly series. So I thought that they could have brought that further home, made it more in the light of the original. I think that would have been better. At number 11, just outside of top 10, we got I'm Cursed. So I'm sure most of you are scratching your head right now like, I'm cursed? Really? Is this worthy of being in this spot? And I will admit this is maybe our only true filler in the show, maybe other than I dragged him, but let me explain. Seeing the iCarly birthday curse return was really fun, and then seeing Principal Franklin reintroduce, bringing Freddie and Carly their letters from Miss Briggs from 15 years ago, I think is a great way to bring in that kind of idea of growing up, and I think that's really important in a show like this. Then seeing Freddie realize he never had the time to party and go stupid was fun, and then seeing Carly embrace the birthday curse and try to go for it was also really fun. That final party with Duke and Principal Franklin and the guy that actually dies, like we had our first character death in iCarly, all that was just very comedically funny to me, and this is one of those episodes that makes me laugh the most, and this is just a personal thing. I like I'm Cursed, just outside of my top 10, so yeah. Number 10, I Can Fix It Myself. I've always seen this episode as a bit of a send-off for Sam. Like, Vin Diesel the car is kind of like a a visual memory of Sam in the studio forever, and the story about Sam in the car, it's kind of a send-off for her in my head. So for that reason, this episode is important and memorable and emotional, but everything else about this episode has aged rather poorly. This is the episode where we meet Wes, and there's a lot of focus on Maeve, characters that we don't really see anymore, so it's just not as relevant, and looking back at it, it's just a little less good. So, main takeaway, important episode for the send-off of Sam, but otherwise a little bit mediocre now. Number 9, I hire a new assistant. This episode, again, might be my personal opinion taking over, but I think that this is a perfect way to bring back an old character and then send them off if you're going to show them one time. I think this is Season 2's version of iRobot Wedding, where we get Nevel again, and I think the way that they used Grandpa was just perfect. They couldn't have done better, in my eyes. I think the Revival series has done a great job at capturing what family means and what kind of complications can come with family, with Millicent or Spencer or these different family members for our main characters that really caused that dilemma. This is a classic iCarly dilemma that we'd see in the original series, brought in and modernized into a contemporary form. I think it's just done very well. And I think this is one of the best endings for an episode I've seen on the Revival, with Grandpa and Carly and Spencer kind of having that family hug. So yeah, I love this episode. Number 8, I Build a Team. This is the episode where we get introduced to Paul and the instant rivalry he creates with Freddie. Seeing Nathan Kress and Josh Peck have this comedic rivalry is just beautiful. I loved watching them go back and forth, and most importantly, when these two people who meant a lot to Carly at different parts of her life have to come together across their differences and help Carly when she is getting claustrophobic in the escape room. I thought this was really fun. It added a lot of depth to the whole iCarly team. I love Paul, so that was something that was really positive about this episode. This episode also has a really fun subplot with Spencer kind of proving himself and the Shay Wet restaurant and all these crazy antics going on between him and Harper. It's just really fun overall. A great, well-rounded episode for me. That's it for part 2 of our 23 episode ranking of the iCarly Revival series episodes. Let me know your own opinions of the ones so far. Which decision are you most angry about that I've made? I want to know everything. Let me know. And of course, if you guys enjoy the videos, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribed. But I'll see you guys tomorrow with that brand new last top 8 video for the rest of the episodes, and I'll see you soon.